Hey, thanks everybody. Before going into questions, just wanted to highlight the fact that the club just announced a roster move. In case you hadn't seen it, we have designated Dwight Smith for assignment and selected the contract of Mason Williams from our training site in Bowie. We've undergone a couple of roster moves the last couple of days. I think a lot of which have stemmed from us trying to stabilize our roster mix in light of particularly injuries to the simultaneous injuries to Jose Iglesias and Austin Hayes. And I think that having Mason with the team, along with Ryan Mountcastle, will give us a versatile defensive option. Can play a legit center field and a similar left-handed bat off the bench. Dwight Smith is somebody that we have a lot of affection for, and has had some really good runs here with us since joining the organization last spring training. A lot of promise in his bat, and there still is. And I think selfishly, we hope that he'll remain in the organization after this designation period. But part of the process is other teams are going to have the opportunity to either trade for or claim Dwight here in the next few days. So we'll have to work through that process. But great kid, great player, and he's been a big part of our clubhouse here. And he got off to a weird start this year, coming in, tested positive for the virus, and then basically having no summer camp and starting right on the major league roster. So, if we do end up keeping him, our hopes would be to get his feet underneath him at our site and get him back here on the club, but we're going to have to see what happens.
All right. Thanks, Mike. First question from Rock. Rock, go ahead.
Hey, Mike. Switching over to Ryan Mountcastle, what was it that made your organization decide that this was the right time to bring him up to the majors, and will we be seeing more prospects filtering in?
It's a difficult decision timing it, and I've spoken repeatedly with Ryan about it, and he knows that, not that any 23-year-old is a finished product by any means, but this is somebody that we had introduced a pretty dramatic position change to midstream last year. And there were still things that he was working on, very much so defensively and even offensively, trying to polish up. We wanted him to be the type of guy that when he gets promoted to the big leagues, he's here to stay. And we wanted to make sure that we give him a good chance of that being the case. It may be the case. We hope it's the case. It may not. And if not, it's not the end of the world. But we always hope for that when you bring up a prospect of this caliber, that he's able to stay put. So we wanted to get him as many repetitions in left field as we could. That was the plan in Sarasota when he had been optioned or was about to be, and then the shutdown hit. And, with the lack of a minor league season this year, it made for a very strange calculus where we wanted him to get work in left field. We wanted him to work on the offensive development goals that we had for him this year, but there were no real games to be played. And at some point, it's in his best interest to go see some other uniforms and play in some real games. And so we felt that this was the time for that. And so, we understand and expect that he's still developing, and he's still one of the youngest players in the big leagues now. And, there's going to be ups and downs, but we're excited to have him on the team. As he said, we feel he's in a decent enough spot defensively in terms of his comfort in left field to at least survive out there right now. I think he might surprise us. He's a good athlete and he's a good baseball player, and getting the real in-game repetitions will be great for him. And he performed well at Bowie. He walked a lot more than he struck out, which was great to see. And there were some really legit arms down there throwing at him. It was, Hall and Kramer and Bradish and Klein and Handhold, and it was nothing but velocity and plus stuff down there, and he did well. So I think he's ready for this challenge. We'll take it as it comes, but I'm excited to see what he can do.
Brett Hollander.
Yeah, Mike, going back to what's happening right now in Bowie, long-term, short-term, best you can assess right now, this situation, does it hurt the pitching prospects more, the guys who we probably won't see this year, or the hitting prospects and position prospects more at this point?
Well, I think that the pitchers that are fortunate to be included on the pool at Bowie, they should be in okay shape. We want to make sure that they log as many innings as possible for physical reasons, so that the hangover of this into 2021 is as minimal as it can be. I wish we could get more players here. We may try to as things go. We'll see. Possibly the rules will get tweaked, and because I think everyone here is benefiting a ton. But I worry about the pitchers that aren't here, because they're going to have to deal with presumably an innings jump next year and just a lack of a game pitching all year. And then I'm also, I worry about some of the young teenage hitters, Adam Hall, Daryl Hernandez, guys like that just haven't had a ton of upper level pitching exposure yet and are still developing. We've got Gunnar Henderson here right now. I know he's getting a lot out of this. So it's just an unfortunate situation where the industry is doing the best it can, but is what it is for these young guys. We're just trying to do as well as possible. And the guys that are home, we have systematic communications in place to make sure they're doing as best as they can in their home environments, and they're staying in touch with our coaching staff and our strength coaches.
Nathan Ruiz.
Hey, Mike. Obviously, the next week or so is going to play a big role in this. But what do you see the trade deadline looking like for you guys?
Yeah, I really don't know what's going to happen. There are, as I think a lot of people have written about, there's so many dynamics and variables this year. It's hard to list them all. So it could be that nothing happens. It could be that we make 3 or 4 trades. I don't know yet. We're certainly talking and working on it. And despite the fact that our club is playing well and has a good record, is in the mix, we're still listening on players that are on our major league roster, if it makes sense for our future and for next year and the broader picture. But we're not extra motivated to do anything, and we're listening to baseball trades as they come along.
Rich Dubroff.
Mike, now Mountcastle is here, and we saw Keegan Aiken briefly a couple of weeks ago. Do you have plans to bring back Aiken and bring up Dean Kramer and perhaps Diaz to the big team?
Yeah, I think any of the guys that are at Bowie right now that are upper level AA, AAA guys, they all have a chance of getting called up this year, just depending on circumstances in the roster and maybe how the trade deadline goes. I think any of those guys that played in Bowie last year or played a good chunk in Bowie last year or higher, need to be ready. And the rest of the crew, it's more likely that it's a kind of a player development experience for them. But those guys at the upper levels, they're all on our radar screen. I would expect, and our plans are to have Keegan Aiken back up here this year. I don't know what his role will be. I think that will depend on the makeup of our pitching staff whenever he's up. It could be a mixture of roles, but we still view him as a starting prospect long term. And then Kramer's knocking on the door too. I think ordinarily he'd be in AAA right now. He didn't pitch much in AAA last year. It's kind of a shame he's missing out on that. But he's throwing well at the alternate site. He had a really minor groin thing that slowed him down, and he's still kind of building back up. But I just saw him yesterday. He threw 4 innings, I want to say, and looked good. So I think we could see him, but we'll just have to see how things go.
Dan Connolly.
My kind of a follow-up on the last 2 questions from Nathan's question. How has this trade deadline compared so far in the last maybe the final 8 or 9 days from last year as far as activity or discussions, things of that nature? And also Diaz, Richard brought up, is he a little bit too far away right now simply because of the fact that he really hasn't played any AAA?
Yeah, but the trade deadline, it's just strange. This you have the pool aspect, you have the financial constraints to the industry, There's just so much uncertainty. You have expanded playoffs. I would say there's probably only 4 teams right now that really don't have much of a mathematical chance of getting in, and it's just a little weird because of all that. But I think the Red Sox trade yesterday maybe will get things going, and we'll see. But I just really don't know what to expect. I think it's going to be different, but I just don't know. And Diaz, he looks really good, both offensively and defensively, down there at the alternate site right now. He's got a great work ethic. The attitude and the energy have been really good every day. Just like Mountcastle did, he's seeing a lot of really tough pitching, but the performance has been there. And he's really close. He'd be a guy too that would be in AAA for the first time right now. He would have been there last year had he not strained his leg right at the end of the season. And it's a shame that he's not getting that experience, but he's really close. He's not on our 40-man roster yet. So that is something of a consideration when you look at a guy like him. But this guy's really close, and I continue to be excited about him. And I kind of feel like he's flying under the radar a little bit right now, which is kind of a good thing.
David Loria.
Hey, Mike. Yesterday's trade involved a couple of established relievers, as you know. Generally speaking, how much value do bullpen arms have in today's game, particularly for teams that aren't serious contenders?
It's really tough on a team when you feel like you're going to win a game and you blow it. And that's whether you're a first-place team or a fourth-place team. It's just a tough night. And, when you're trying to develop starting pitchers, being able to hand off games to quality relievers is nice. It puts less pressure on the manager to stretch those young starters. So there's a lot of value to it to any club. But obviously, if you're a playoff-bound team or you're in a playoff race, I think that relievers are more valuable to you than anyone else. And, particularly in a season like this where I guess you might think of it like the proportion of the season that these relievers are going to throw, it's greater than normal. And I think that their impact it's going to decide some of these races maybe a little bit more than normal. So I think there's some extra value on the relievers this year because of that, possibly. And when you're looking at guys that are approaching free agency or nearing it, and you're a young team and you're growing for the future, you gotta think and plan ahead too, and get some repetitions to younger guys that are part of your long-term plan. So all that weighs in, but I think as you saw last night, there's still a lot of value in this game being placed on proven relievers.
Jerry Coleman.
Hey, Mike, what can you tell us about Chris Davis's injury, and if severe, is there any consideration maybe for shutting him down for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I haven't heard any talk like that yet. He has had a sore knee for a few weeks now. He's been playing through it and kind of intermittently getting treatment, but it had been bothering him more the last week, the last few days. Obviously the performance hasn't been there, and I think that when you're struggling and playing through an injury, you probably take a closer look at giving it the rest it needs and getting past it. So we'll see, but I'd say it's probably more likely something that is on a week-to-week basis than anything where we're looking at shutting him down or making the decision to shut him down long-term.
Steve Molesky.
Mike, how concerning is the lack of innings from the rotation to this point? And if you have a need in the rotation moving forward, would you consider one of the prospects from Bowie going right into the rotation?
Yeah, I think we would certainly be open to if and when we promote a starting pitcher prospect, to having them start right off the bat. I think Aiken was a little different situation because we were in a stretch where we were in need of a long reliever, going into that chunk of the schedule. He was the next man up. It was, I think, a good time to give him a big league opportunity. And we knew we'd be able to have him in the pen and know that he's a guy that can give you 3-4 innings of length when needed. But I like I said earlier, I think when we bring him back up, if there's a rotation spot open, that might be the role that he's in then. I think that it's tough to go 3 times through an order nowadays in today's game. It's tough to throw 6, 7, 8 innings. That's why those really, really premium front of the rotation starting pitchers are getting the money and the contracts they're getting, because those guys are hard to find right now. Overall, I think we've been relatively pleased with what this group's been able to do. We've been getting a lot of 5-inning starts from these guys. While that's not the same as throwing 7 or 8 innings, it's a pretty good start in today's game. We do have slightly expanded rosters right now, and we do have a bullpen that features 2 kind of real long men in Lopez and Eshelman, and then some kind of short long men in Lakins and Armstrong that have been very effective. So overall, I don't feel that the pitching staff's been overly taxed from that standpoint. I think Brandon's done a really good job of finding the spots for those guys. But I do think that, Eshelman and Lopez, Armstrong and Lakins have been really key in bridging those middle innings for us, whether we're winning or losing. That those guys have done a good job, and it's taken some pressure off the pitching staff. And don't forget, we're still kind of getting John Means stretched out and normalized from everything that he's gone through with kind of a really weird start to the year and then a personal tragedy. So I think that situation should even continue to improve once we get him right.
Nathan Ruiz.
Hey, Mike, after the Blyer trade, you mentioned that, the focus is still adding talent. Given how you guys have started the year, does that calculus change in any way? Is there ways to still do that while keeping the team in the position it was before this past week or so?
Yeah, I think we're looking at it from both angles, and it's not we're not going to just sell just to sell and get more prospects, but we're not going to hold on to every single person on the team just because we're close to a 500 club right now. We're going to look at everything on a case-by-case basis. I still maintain, from a strategic standpoint, from where we started from, this being a 100-loss team now 2 years in a row, and starting from that point, and the total lack of international pipeline that everyone else has, we've got some catching up to do on a pipeline front, filling in the farm system. We've made a lot of progress, but we're still, keeping a broad eye on that. And, the division that we're in, we're trying to catch up with the Yankees and the Rays. It's a high bar. So it's nice to see, some good play and some improvement from the team this early. The effort and energy has been incredible. I think we're going to continue to battle every night, but we're going to be thinking about more than this season when we go into the trade deadline this week.
Just a couple more. Rich Dubroff.
Mike, Brandon the other day, when he was asked about Hunter Harvey, said he thought he would be going on this next road trip. Is that the case? And do you have to have him on the taxi squad to start the road trip, because you can't bring him in once the road trip starts?
We could bring him in, I believe, once the road trip starts if he's not on the taxi squad. I don't think that is illegal, but it may make, as he's nearing the end of his rehab, and if we have a activation date on the horizon, it may make the most sense to just have him on the trip. So he threw really well yesterday, doing some live BPs, and the next stop for him will be doing some sim games, which not too much of a difference between those two things, but we've got a kind of a full game environment going on at Bowie, and so he'll do that next, and he feels great. And we're hoping that maybe he's on the team before the month is over.
Last one, Bill Ladson.
Thanks for taking my call. Could you tell me what has disappointed you the most regarding the Major League squad, and what has pleasantly surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of pleasant surprises. You know, you look around our roster, and it's a kind of a mix right now of young guys that the organization drafted in the last few years. All of them are still kind of settling in as big leaguers. You know, Mullins, Hayes, Cisco, Means, and you know, a lot of those guys are, some of them are having better years than others, but all of them are you know, continuing the process to grow in as major leaguers, and that's a big part of you know, the success of what we do here the next few years is how those guys do. But then the other half of the team is guys from other organizations that were basically you know, DFA'd or waived or whatever. They came here, had an opportunity last year, and did pretty well last year, but now we're seeing that some of them might be even doing even better this year and impressing some people, and that's great too. And so I think that has been a really positive development this year. I credit the coaching staff with getting a lot of these guys better. I credit the players themselves with putting in the work, and you know, our scouts and analysts for helping identify a lot of these guys. And I think that's been a nice story for us this year. And you know, we hope that it keeps going, even though we've kind of gone through a rough patch here with the bats going cold the last week or so. You know, that happens. But you know, on the negative side, we're you know, we're a young team. We've made some mistakes here and there, whether it's base running or defensive. I think that's to be expected. But you know, we've got higher expectations than that, and we'll keep working on it. And you know, that's part of what we're doing as well. And we, you know, we don't expect a team full of 25-year-old, 26-year-old guys to execute perfectly every night, but we strive for that to be the case, and we're putting in the work towards that.